Hi, everybody. Listen, I just wanted to talk a little bit more. This will be short, and there's just a couple assignments that are pretty easy to do with this one. So I wanted to talk about social work in general and how we take perspectives as social workers, how they've been developed over the years. There's a common theme among them a little bit in terms of ecology, environment, stuff like that, but it's how we look at people in their world. The first one is the ecosystems model. And that idea is that life is full of systems and subsystems, and the subsystems give off energy. I'm going to show you this in a minute. And when there's a disruption in one of those subsystems, it sets off counteracting balances that in the other systems. So let me give you one because I'm going to also ask you to do your own. This is not going to be really easy to see, but this is me in the middle. And I picked out, a handful of the systems that are important to me. My dogs are important. My daughter's important. My job is important. The horse is important, but you notice it's over here. I have friends here, but I have other friends that are further away. This is the gym. I'm looking at this upside down. I hope it looks right to you. This is my political involvement in the committees. So if something happens, for example, let's say I quit being involved in politics, that's going to affect other systems. First of all, my job is dependent on it, right? It could end up that if I quit politics and I lose my job, I don't have money to help my daughter out anymore or to buy dog food or something like that. If I lose friends, I've done something and I lose friends, that has a big hole then in my environment. So I hope that makes sense. That's how we look at it. We look at a client's system, and oftentimes we can see that something happened here or something's missing, and we can see how that sets off the other systems. So that's the important, we call that social systems or ecosystem viewpoint. So I'm probably going to ask you to name some of the systems in your life as the assignment for this, but I just want to make sure you understand that. Another one is the ecological view, and this has the idea is how person fits in with their environment. What other factors are there? So let's say you live by a factory, and there's like a bad odor that comes out of that factory repeatedly, or there's something that contaminates the air, and you have a child with asthma. There is an ecological effect there. But if you have a job that you can not find other housing, you're stuck there. You are having an ecological problem and it's affecting you. In a bigger way, you can look at, and I'll talk a little bit about this more later, but if you live in a big urban center, the ecological effect of that can be very different than if you live out in a far rural area. So it's kind of about that, but it's about we take a look and see what's happening in someone's life. If someone is in an area where there's a lot of danger in the neighborhood, that is definitely affecting their everyday behaviors with their kids, with their spouse. When they go out, can they go out and take a walk at night? So, as social workers, we keep an eye on that. It's not all just psychology, it's also what's happening. The next part is social functioning, and I'm going to ask you a question about this. So let me ask the question here for a minute. Name things that affect people's ability to socially function, whether they can function or not. Just think about that for a minute. I'm going to throw out a couple, and then I'll ask each of you to maybe give me five. Okay, so genetics, right? You don't, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm 5 feet tall. So I'm short, and that does have an effect on my social functioning, especially when I go to the food store and I can't reach things. Another thing that has to do with my level of social functioning might be the amount of sleep I get. So if I'm getting 5 or 6 hours a night of sleep, I might be able to do okay. If I'm getting 3 or 4, I'm cranky. And if I get 8, I'm doing great. So that does impact somebody's social functioning. Your age affects your social functioning. That's a pretty obvious one. So think about some things like this is not that hard. Just think of things that affect, say, your life, your mood. It can be anything. It can be external things. It can be internal things, family things. So we look at that. We look at to find out what is happening within those different systems to see how they are. Another thing that we do with that is to try to figure out what level of risk people have. So I'm going to give you an example. Suppose we have a woman, she's 65, her spouse dies, and we want to decide if she's functioning low level, kind of an at risk level, or she is not coping, or she's ineffectively coping. So, for example, if we find out that she maybe isn't going to her job anymore, she's decided to retire, but she is going to a grief group, she has a counselor, and she's making sure she goes out with friends for breakfast 3 days a week. We would probably say she's functioning pretty well. She's a low risk. If we found out that she kind of had stopped the work, but was also not calling her friends, and that she was falling behind in her bills, and her kids kind of found out that she was falling behind in her bills, we would say she might not be functioning so well. Like, she's getting up, she might be cleaning her house, she might be eating, but she is starting to isolate and be alone. Now, another person, perhaps same thing, husband dies, stops going to work, but not calling friends, but she adds in that she's not getting showered every day, and she's tripled the amount of alcohol she drinks every week. That person is really at risk. And so we take a look at those things along with the systems to figure out how people are doing. And the other one is what we call environmental risk, or environmental press. I'm sorry, environmental press. So the important thing about environmental press is that we all have presses from our environment on us. And they are different from the area where you are and your time of life and all of those things. If I would like you to think about this for a minute. If you lived in Lower Bucks County, if you lived in Central Bucks County, or if you live in Upper Bucks County, what kind of press do you have on you about being able to get milk at 10 o'clock at night? So if you're in Lower Bucks County, say you live in Levittown, there's a Wawa probably within a mile, and it's open 24 hours, and you can go get milk in the middle of the night. If you are in Central Bucks, there's a pretty good chance that there is either a Wawa or a food store within maybe 8 minutes away. And you could probably get milk, but you would have to drive at least 8 minutes and then 8 minutes back. If you're in Upper Bucks, there are places that closed at 6 o'clock. So you need to think ahead if you're going to need milk. It seems like a small thing, but it's an environmental press. Those people in the Upper County have a little bit of more pressure on them, right? Because they have to think ahead of time about food and things, where it's not true in the lower and middle end. On the other hand, another environmental press is access, say, to fresh fruit and vegetables. The Upper Bucks County has a lot of farms, farmers markets, so they don't have as much press on them as long as they get things before they're closed. Lower Bucks County, in terms of fresh vegetables, farmers markets, they don't really have them. You would probably go to the food store. So there's a little more press there, especially if you wanted specifically to save money and go to a farmer's market, you would have to take time to travel. Things that put press on people can be health insurance, co-pays, that kind of pressure, access to medical care if you have a hospital near you or you don't, whether your school system is good or not good, the kind of daycare that you were able to drop your children off at. Environmental press can be if you're divorced versus single. There's a little more press there in terms of a divorced person if they're providing all the rides for kids. My point with this most important thing with environmental press is that it's cumulative. So it's okay to have maybe one thing for a little while, but if you have several environmental presses and they go on, and then another one comes in, it becomes a cumulative effect, and it can really take a toll on people. So that's the other thing that as social workers we look at. Hoping that you can just take a minute and answer the questions that I have in there, and I'll actually get to know you even better from that. So thank you very much. Talk to you soon.